In 2008, the global financial system nearly collapsed. Not because of a war, not because of a natural disaster, but because of greed, deception, and a system designed to fail. Millions of families lost their homes. Retirement savings vanished overnight. Unemployment exploded to levels not seen since the Great Depression. But the darkest part? Many of the people responsible didn't go to prison. Some of them got even richer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the 2008 financial crisis, not the sanitized textbook version. The real story. The fraud, the cover-ups, and the uncomfortable truth about who actually paid the price. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at banks, Wall Street, or your own money the same way again. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to the years before the crash. The early 2000s were a golden age for American homeownership, or so it seemed. Interest rates were low. Banks were handing out mortgages like candy. And here's the twist. The banks didn't even care if you could pay them back. Why? Because they weren't planning to keep your loan. They bundled thousands of mortgages together into products called mortgage-backed securities, or MBs, and sold them off to investors around the world. The bank got its money up front. The risk? That became someone else's problem. But it gets worse. These securities were sliced and repackaged again into something called CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. Complex financial instruments so confusing that even many of the people selling them didn't fully understand them. And rating agencies, the companies paid to tell investors how safe these products were, gave them AAA ratings, the highest possible grade, the same rating as US Treasury bonds, on products stuffed with loans made to people with no income, no job, and no assets. This wasn't incompetence. This was a rigged game. Mortgage brokers were pushing adjustable rate loans onto families who barely understood the terms. People were told their monthly payments would stay manageable, only for those payments to explode a few years later. Some borrowers were encouraged to lie about their income just to get approved. These became known as liar loans. And because everyone in the chain was making money, brokers, banks, insurers, rating agencies, hedge funds, almost nobody wanted to stop the machine. As long as housing prices kept rising, the illusion held together. By 2006, home prices had been artificially inflated for years. Then they started to fall. Subprime borrowers, people who had been given loans they could never realistically afford, began defaulting in massive numbers. The mortgage-backed securities started losing value. The CDOs built on top of them? Worthless. Banks that had been holding these assets on their books were suddenly sitting on ticking time bombs. And this is where panic turned into chaos. Major financial institutions were leveraged to dangerous levels, meaning they had borrowed enormous amounts of money to amplify profits. Some banks were operating with leverage ratios above 30 to 1. That meant even a small drop in asset values could wipe them out completely. When confidence disappeared, the entire system began collapsing like dominoes. In September 2008, Lehman Brothers, one of the most powerful investment banks on Wall Street, filed for the largest bankruptcy in US history. The stock market went into free fall. Credit markets froze. Banks stopped lending to each other because nobody trusted anybody. The financial system, the circulatory system of the entire economy, had a heart attack. Within weeks, the crisis had spread globally. Iceland's entire banking system collapsed. European banks imploded. Stock markets from Tokyo to London crashed. 8.7 million Americans lost their jobs. 8 million homes were foreclosed. The median American household lost nearly 40% of their net worth. Small businesses shut down overnight because they couldn't get loans. Families drained their savings just to survive. College graduates entered the worst job market in decades. For millions of ordinary people, the crisis didn't feel like a recession. It felt like the future had been stolen from them. But here's the question nobody wants to answer. Who knew this was coming? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Internal emails from Goldman Sachs revealed that executives were privately calling their own mortgage products crap and dogs, while continuing to sell them to clients, and, in some cases, betting against them at the same time. The FBI had been warning Congress about widespread mortgage fraud as early as 2004. 4 years before the crash, economists, journalists, and a handful of investors had also sounded the alarm, but they were ignored, mocked, or drowned out by the profits flooding Wall Street. The rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, Fitch, were being paid by the very banks whose products they were rating. A conflict of interest so blatant it's almost hard to believe. When one analyst raised concerns, internal messages showed the response: "We need this deal or we lose the client." And then came the bailout. The US government handed out $700 billion through TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, to rescue the banks. Not the homeowners. Not the workers, the banks. The argument was that the financial system was too interconnected to let collapse completely. And maybe that was true. But to ordinary people watching from the outside, it looked like Wall Street had gambled recklessly, crashed the economy, and then been rescued with taxpayer money. The executives who ran these institutions into the ground? Most kept their bonuses. Some received raises. The total compensation paid to Wall Street in 2008, the year of the crash, was $18 billion. One banker famously said they were doing God's work. Of the hundreds of executives whose decisions contributed to the collapse, the total number who went to prison for it is 1. A mid-level trader at Credit Suisse. Not a single senior executive from any major US bank faced criminal charges. The system didn't fail by accident. The system worked exactly as designed for the people at the top. To be fair, some things did change. The Dodd-Frank Act in 2010 introduced the most sweeping financial regulation since the Great Depression. It created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It required banks to hold more capital. It added oversight to derivatives markets. But critics argue it didn't go nearly far enough. The banks got bigger. The too big to fail problem got worse. By 2018, parts of Dodd-Frank had already been rolled back. The 2008 crisis also reshaped public trust, or rather, destroyed it. Polls show Americans' confidence in banks and financial institutions never fully recovered. It fueled anger toward elites, corporations, and governments. It became one of the defining moments that reshaped politics, economics, and public opinion across the world. And the wealth gap? It widened. The stock market recovered. Home values recovered. But for the bottom 50% of Americans who didn't own significant assets, the recovery was far slower or never came at all. Many families who lost homes or jobs during the crisis never fully regained the financial stability they had before 2008. The 2008 financial crisis wasn't just an economic event. It was a stress test for the entire idea that the system works for everyone. And it failed. The dark truth is this: the crisis was foreseeable, it was warned about, and when it came, the people with power used that power to protect themselves and handed the bill to everyone else. And maybe the most chilling part of all is this: the conditions that created the crash never completely disappeared. Massive corporate debt, speculative bubbles, complex financial products few people truly understand, markets driven by short-term profits instead of long-term stability. History doesn't always repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. Understanding this isn't about being cynical, it's about being clear-eyed. Because the same incentives that caused 2008 still exist today. The same conflicts of interest. The same short-term thinking. If you found this video valuable, subscribe because next week we're looking at what the signs of the next financial crisis might look like, and what ordinary people can actually do to protect themselves. Drop a comment, do you think the right people were ever held accountable? I want to hear your take. Thanks for watching, stay informed.